Hi, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my craft room. Thanks for joining me today. I'm actually a part of a hop today. The Card Hoppin' Facebook group has a monthly hop, and this month is New Beginnings using watercolor pencils or just colored pencils in general. So I decided to do some watercolor pencils because I have these distress watercolor pencils from Ranger and Tim Holtz, and I've never really used them before. I am not a watercolorist person, but we're going to do my best here. So I'm starting off with a piece of watercolor cardstock. I have these really wide water brushes that I wanted to use. They've never been used before, so I filled them up with water, but I only end up needing one. And I wanted to create a rainbow. To me, I thought this card, just using a rainbow, is such a great, colorful way to think about a new beginning. I also thought that the overall theme of this card, which is going to be all you need is love and a dog, would be really cute for someone who maybe just got a new puppy or a new dog in their life. And this is my first time actually hopping along with this Facebook group. I've been really wanting to join in, and so I finally was like, okay, Lauren, we're doing it this year. So this is also a new beginning for me and a new thing. And I'm also using watercolor distress pencils for the first time. So lots of new things. So I wasn't really sure the best way to approach this background. I knew I wanted to create a rainbow. So I added a little bit of color, tried to kind of evenly space it out, and then I used my watercolor brush to just blend out that color and try to blend them together. But as you can see, where I drew on with the Distress watercolor pencils, it stayed pretty obvious, if that makes sense. So I wasn't really thrilled with how it was coming out, but I just thought, you know what, we're going to add more color and try again. So I'm going to bring out my Heat It tool and I'm just going to dry my background. So once it's all dry, I just set it on a silicone mat so that way it wouldn't heat up my glass mat too hot. I went back again with the same colors, and this time I added more color across the whole segment, not just one little part. I tried not to go too heavy on the colors that were already pretty heavy, like the fired brick color and the blue color. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head right now, but this is the set one watercolor pencils. I really wanted to just buy them all because I have full set syndrome, but I wanted to just get one set and try to really use it more in my crafting before I buy another one. So this is a good way for me to be using it. And I just added more color, so similar to what I did beforehand. And then I'm going to grab those watercolor brushes and try again. So it's looking a little better because I have more of the color from the pencils down. Now the lines from the first time around don't really go away very much. You can still see kind of the red and blues. But the way I lay out my card with my um, die cut images and shapes, I think it covers them enough that it's not a big deal. But I would say either pick up the paint directly from the pencil and apply it, or color the whole section, and then you can go over and darken some areas instead of starting off with such a dark start, if that makes sense. So you won't get those weird lines like I have. But overall, I think it looks nice. It's a nice rainbow. It's very pretty. So after I am happy with the background, here I am trying to get rid of some of that dark blue section, but it doesn't work. I'm going to actually trim it down so it will fit behind my slimline die cuts that I did. Everything I'm using today, die cuts and stamps, are from Heffy Doodle. So I have a black frame, some green grass, vellum hearts, and these adorable cute little puppies that I stamped and colored with my Ohuhu art markers. But since the theme of this hop is watercolor pencils, I thought I would just focus on that, and you can just see how the rest of my card comes together for this video. I don't want to take up too much of your time since it's a hop and you have other people to see. I thought about stenciling some hearts, but I opted to not do that. So we're just going to start putting this card together. So I want to trim that rainbow background to fit behind my black frame there. Now, I will say my paper was still a tiny bit wet, so when I rush cut it right here, I caused some ripping and tearing, which made me really sad. I forgot that the edges were still a little wet and that you need to move a little slower with wet paper. So luckily it's not a big deal. So I'm just going to continue trimming this background down so that way it will fit nicely behind that black frame. So the black frame itself is 8 by 3, but it is a nice thick frame. So I have plenty of wiggle room to put my background behind that black frame without it worrying about, did I lose too much with that really bad first cut on my paper cutter. There wasn't a lot of purple, so I'm going to trim off the side, mostly from the pink side, because I wanted more purple than I cared about having pink, because there is some red already in my rainbow. I am going to save that nice strip that I cut off, and I'm going to add it on the inside of my card. So I will set that aside for now. So now to glue the frame together, I want that smaller piece of green, this die cut grass, to fit right behind my black border. So I'm just gluing that directly to the back side using some wet glue and trimming off the excess so that way it hides nicely behind the frame. And then I'm going to grab my card base. So this is a Slimline card base. I cut it down from an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardstock. So when it is scored and folded, it is 8.5 by 3.5. I'm going to use my nice, really big adhesive gun here to glue on my watercolor background to my base. And I'm going to center that right onto my card base because I did use some water on it. I wanted to make sure it was nice and secured to my background or to my card base. And now I can glue down the back layer of the grass. So I want these two pieces of grass to be layered so I can put my dogs kind of in between both, like they're playing in the grass. So I made a mark of where I need to trim it on my cutter, and then I will just use my paper cutter to make it a little shorter, and that way I can glue this piece directly to the bottom of my rainbow background, and it will fit exactly how I want it to behind my frame. You can see here I have my 2 layers of grass and I'm pretty happy with it. So I'll go ahead and trim it down on the right side so that way it's not wider than my border as well. And then just like I did with the grass to the back of the frame, this time I'm going to glue it down to the rainbow piece of cardstock that is on my card base. My 3 vellum hearts are going to be kind of in between these 2 layers, so I want to kind of figure out my layout with them before I glue down anything more. And the middle heart is going to have a sentiment on it. So I grabbed a really cute sentiment, all you need is love and a dog. And I'm going to emboss it with my VersaFine Onyx Black and some Holographic Ranger Ink embossing powder. So I'm using my Misty and my anti-static powder to help me get a nice stamped sentiment. So once I have that stamped, and like I said, I'm going to use a holographic powder. I just thought it would look really pretty than just using a regular clear. It would add a little bit of sparkle and shine to the card. Once my embossing gun is warmed up, I'm going to melt down that embossing powder, and here you can see that shimmer on my sentiment. Now, like I said, I wanted my hearts to be kind of in between the grass layers, so the black frame and the rainbow, but I'm going to add dimension, and I notice here that my heart will slide in there perfectly fine, so I'm going to go ahead and attach my black frame with my foam adhesive strip. So I'm using foam adhesive from scrapbook.com. They have these really great 1/8 of an inch strips, so I'm just applying those all around all 4 sides. I'm peeling off the release paper, and then I'm going to center that to my card base, making sure my grass is lined up nicely and the edges of my rainbow background aren't showing. So for the 3 hearts, I'm going to use my mint tape. This is just a repositional tape, also from scrapbook.com, to keep my hearts in place while I figure out the layouts of my dogs. And that's because these hearts are vellum, and any adhesive will show through it if you're not careful. So I wanted to figure out where my dogs are going to go on top of the vellum, and then I can add some wet adhesive where the dogs will be covering that part of the vellum. So you'll see here, I know the dogs are going to be covering the bottom part of the heart, so I added some wet glue. I tap it with my finger because I find that kind of spreading out that glue a little bit more keeps it from showing a lot. And then I peel off the release paper behind my little puppies, and I'm going to layer them in between the two layers of glass or grass and kind of tuck it and make sure my heart is secure. Now I decided that I was going to add a little bit of shine with my pops of color, so I'm adding tiny little glue dots behind my vellum hearts that I will actually end up covering with some liquid embellishment. So I'm just adding a few here and there in areas where I know I will add some of my pops of color. So I brought out my Snowflake pops of color, which also has kind of a holographic shine to it to match my sentiment, and I'm just adding little pops of those sparkly pops to cover where I applied the glue. On the inside, I glued down that little rainbow strip and I stamped another sentiment. And here is a final look at how this card turned out. I really love this Slimline card. I think my watercolor rainbow background turned out really pretty, and I love how it's layered behind the vellum hearts and these cute little puppies from Heffy Doodle. Thank you for joining me on the hop today. You can find all the information about the hop and how to hop along with the hashtag down below in my description. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!